Hey guys, so for day 2, you read a story called Grady the Grouch. Now, this story I thought was awesome, and I so wish we could have read it together in class. But I wanted to talk about your question today. That is one that you can answer in your journal or if you're printing these in the box beside it. But that question was, is Grady the Grouch a good title for this book? So I just want to write it down so that we can all look at the title together. And it says, is Grady the Grouch a good title? Think about that question for a second. What do you think that means? Is it a good title? Well, what we're really meaning is it a good title? Does the title make sense for what the story is about? I would say yes. This title does make sense because there was a boy named Grady and he was kind of a grouch, right? It also makes sense for the story because that is what the kids told Grady. They said, Grady, you grouch. Or they said, let me go back to my story so I can see exactly what they were saying. They said, ouch, you grouch. Ouch, you grouch. And think about being Grady. Because the second part of this question is really, really interesting, I think, to think about. Yes, this title makes sense for the book, but then it says, is Grady the only child who is grouchy in this story? So did you think about that at all? Is Grady the only one being grouchy? Hopefully you thought in your head or said out loud even, no, he's not the only one being grouchy. What happens when he does something to another child? So let's see. Grady was mean, and he was mean first. One time, it says on page 5, one time he threw a soccer ball. It hit Bella. Ouch, you grouch, she said. Can't you be nice? So how would it feel, even as if you think about some time that you might have done something that bothered someone else and wasn't super nice, like Grady did? We've all done something not that nice before that I'm sure we feel bad about. Well, think about if someone was sitting there and they called you a name. Would that make you feel good? No. So now the person that got hit with the ball and Grady, they both don't feel good. So that probably didn't make Grady happy. And if we go on in the story, it says on page 6, and so it went. Every day Grady was mean to kids, which is not good. But in response, they would say, ouch, you grouch. And it says this is called a vicious cycle. If you look on page 6, it says vicious cycle. And the sentence after it tells you what that means. Vicious cycle, that is when the same thing keeps happening and the problem doesn't get solved. So because Grady was mean, the kids called him a grouch. But because they called him a grouch, Grady didn't like them and was mean. So that's how it's a vicious cycle. So, no, Grady was not the only right one in the story. But my favorite part of this story, maybe you'll agree with me, was the very end where it says the kids agreed they would try the rules for a week. Now, this was so important because it gave you a great thing to learn in your own life and use in your own life. I know this has probably happened to almost all of you. The next day, Angie took Max's pencil. He wanted to call her a name, but then he remembered rule number 1, and he said, may I please have my pencil? I really get mad when you take my things. So Angie gave it back. She said she was sorry. I love how this book ends because I was thinking how awesome that is. Instead of Max just automatically getting mad, although I understand getting annoyed if somebody is taking your stuff, right? But instead of responding to be mean back, he says, hey, that really makes me mad. Can you please give it back? And most people are going to be understanding. So keep that in mind. In your own life, you can use that if someone does something like that to you. And then at the very end, we found out or figured out that Grady wasn't such a grouch after all. And Grady tried to get mad at Cindy for taking too long at the water fountain, right? But she said, nope, don't call me a name. Sorry I took so long. And he thought, wow, since she didn't say, ouch, you grouch, maybe she's actually nice. And so he changed too. So this was an awesome story of change, and if you want to talk about it anymore, write me a letter, write me a note, put it on your portfolio, put it in a message, wherever you want, and let's talk. Miss you guys.